Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today, Pierre Poilievre gets Justin Trudeau with a true gotcha moment. It is a beautiful thing to watch. Also in the House of Commons, since it's a Wednesday, they go back and forth about multiple topics. And there's some real zingers here. Not only do they really dig into the crime and corruption that's going on in Canada, they really dig into the lobbyists, the rampant crime in Canada and Ukraine. Buckle up.
At ports, after 8 years, the port authorities are only scanning or inspecting 1% of shipping containers leaving our ports. And that led to the case where Mark Roos had his 2021 Dodge Ram stolen. Luckily, he had an Apple AirTag, so he could follow its transit to the Port of Montreal, where he knows it to be. He called both the cops and the Port Authority, both of which said they don't know which box it's in, so they can't find it. So why won't he accept my common sense plan to buy 24 scanners so we can scan the boxes, find the Dodge Ram, and give it back to Mark?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this would be perhaps a little more credible from the Conservative Party if they hadn't cut 1,000 CBSA officers when they were last in government. And they'd proposed to cut 400 more if they had won the 2015 election. The reality is we restored every single border officer they cut and added 800 more. And we're continuing to do the necessary work. We recovered 1,800 stolen vehicles last year. We'll continue to do...
I'm going to ask members please to keep their comments to themselves until they have the microphone.
While Conservatives cut frontline border services officers, along with cuts to the RCMP, cuts to police forces across the country, we invested in them, and we're going to continue to do that with $121 million for Ontario, more investments for port and border security. We're going to continue to step up and keep Canadians safe.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You know, the Prime Minister's strength is not math, but the facts are that we took office, there were about 12,000 working as CBSA officials, and when we left office, there were over 14,000. So 14,000 is more than 12,000. Help the Prime Minister with the numbers. It's true that we cut back office bureaucracy and high-priced consultants, which he has ballooned, and that's why after 8 years, he has increased auto theft by 32%. Will he accept our common sense plan to cut high-priced consultants and hire more front-line inspectors?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I can't help but smile when the Leader of the Opposition talks about high-priced consultants, because it's his campaign being run by a high-priced consultant for Loblaws. When he stands in this place and across the country wrenching his heartstrings about the prices that Canadians are paying for groceries, when his top advisor is in the pocket of Loblaws giving him the same talking points as she gives Galen Weston when he appeared at Parliamentary Committee. Mr. Speaker, if Canadians are going to believe this Leader of the Opposition, he needs to come clean with who is funding his organizations.
All the barking seals.
Order.
Chanting? What was that?
He's sure getting desperate if he has to blame Conservative campaign workers for the fact that he raised food prices, especially when, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's new marketing director, Max Veliket, did marketing for Loblaws for 4 years. Don Guy, the Prime Minister's chief pollster, works for GT & Co., which collects checks from Loblaws. As does Dan Arnold, his other pollster, getting checks from Loblaws. Are they the ones that forced him to quadruple the carbon tax on our...
This is just going to keep ballooning here. Just buckle up. Pierre came prepared today.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Order. I know it's...
The Liberals are like a skeleton crew. Look at them. They're all like the reanimated dead, just kind of sitting there collecting their paychecks.
Wednesday. I know it's Wednesday and members are very keen to hear the answer to this question, so I'll ask them to please restrain themselves.
Nobody's keen to hear what Trudeau says.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, you can tell it's Wednesday because this morning the members of the Conservative caucus got to hear directly from Jenny Byrne, who sits in their caucus with them, giving them advice. So that is exactly where they're coming. When she is actively on the Loblaws payroll, while at the same time feeding lines to the Leader of the Opposition about food prices and concocting a theory around carbon price and grocery prices that, as the member from Regina Louvain pointed out yesterday, has no basis in fact. We see the kind of torque he chooses to pull.
So like I pointed out in my previous video, that Jenny Byrne, she owns a consulting company, and there's 6 members of her company who did do lobbying for Loblaws. It's only to reduce red tape for beer and wine. It has nothing to do with grocery prices or the groceries whatsoever. Trudeau is just a liar as usual.
Mr. Speaker, he makes it too easy. He talks about caucus meetings and Loblaws. Get this. The Prime Minister had someone who is his Director of Caucus Services named Julie DeWolf, who is now a lobbyist for Loblaws. Not only that, he digs up a lot of dirt. His chief dirt digger, Kevin Bosch, left his office so that he could go and work as a lobbyist for Loblaws. Wouldn't he like us to continue going down the list of all of his Loblaws lobbyists, Mr. Speaker?
Jeez. Trudeau really just walked right into that one. Come on, when you got skeletons in the closet, man, like, what are you doing?
It is quite something to watch the flailing of the Conservatives right now as they do anything to try to distract from the fact that their campaign manager, Pierre, the Leader of the Opposition,
you almost slipped up.
Advisor, is and still gets contributions and paychecks from Loblaws. This is an issue when he has stood up and pretended to care about food prices, when we hear the exact same talking points come out of Galen Weston's mouth as out of the Leader of the Opposition's mouth on some invented connection between the price on pollution and grocery prices, we know exactly who is behind the Conservative Party.
An invented connection. Careful, Justin. You just gave the middle finger to basically all Canadians. Careful, Justin. That's not a nice thing to do there, big guy.
Madam.
According to the Executive Director of the Royal Canadian Legion of Nova Scotia, members of the Canadian Forces are now forced to live in tents, in cars, and to couch surf. There are 30 homeless encampments in Halifax after 8 years of this Prime Minister. But why would the Prime Minister then plan to go ahead with a $450 a year rent increase to our armed forces members who are already forced to live in tents?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, military members and their families are a priority, and we're taking steps to ensure that they are supported. We're investing $445 million over the coming years to tackle the supply of military housing. And when the Conservatives had an opportunity to support our military personnel, they chose not to. The Conservatives stood up in this House and voted against supporting our men and women in uniform just last December. Supporting our men and women in uniform.
Did you hear that? They're men and women in universe.
Supporting our men and women in uniform.
He keeps slipping up. He keeps saying weird things. He said Galen Weston. He said Gaylor Weston or whatever. Something's wrong with Trudeau. His eyes look pretty red in this one. The last one, his eyes were like cockeyed. Check out the previous one, February 6th. He looks like he's totally in Spaceland. If you want to know what's going on, check my comment section. There's some theories down there that I can't say here.
Mr. Speaker, that is an outrageous non-response to the men and women who put their lives on the line for this country. He rewards them with a tent or a couch in someone else's basement to sleep in. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, there's a 177% increase in Bagotville and a 261% increase in the wait line for military housing. And now he plans a $450 rent increase on the people who protect our country. Shouldn't he be ashamed of himself?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from the Conservatives who nickel and dimed our military service members and veterans through 9 years of their time in office, and even dropped military funding to below 1% of GDP, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to step up, including with $445 million for military housing in the coming years, as we continue to honor and support the women and men who serve our country with their lives.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Honors them with a tent to live in. He honors them with a $450 increase in their rent. Before this Prime Minister, we didn't have masses of military members living in tent cities, Mr. Speaker. They could put a roof overhead. In fact, we didn't have 30 tent cities in Halifax. We didn't have 2 million people lined up at food banks in lines that are reminiscent of the Great Depression. We didn't have young people forced to wait till they're age 40 to get a home. The good news is life was not like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Why doesn't he just say it straight out, Mr. Speaker? He's planning to make Canada great again. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, Canada is great. Canada is the best country in the world. And yes, there are challenges, and that's why we're stepping up to invest, whether it's $445 million for military housing, whether it's stepping up with dental care for vulnerable seniors or youth, whether it's cutting child care fees in half, Mr. Speaker, whether it's continuing to step up for vulnerable youth. We are going to be there for Canadians while he proposes cuts to services, cuts to programs, and cuts to the supports that Canadians need.
I want to thank the Prime Minister there for a little plug. If you guys want to get that merch, I've got it linked down below. The shelf on YouTube, that one goes to Teespring, which has pretty high shipping costs. If you go to the link down below, lower shipping costs, lower prices there. I've got multiple other designs I've put up. I'm still trying to find a better supplier, maybe get some better shipping rates, but yeah, thanks, Justin.
So that's what the Prime Minister has to say to the 2 million people lined up around street corners clamoring for the food bank after 8 years. That things are just going great. To the people in Montreal who've seen their rent quadruple after his 8 years, life is just great for them too. To the Torontonians who have to spend 25 years now saving up for the down payment on the average home, he says things are just great. How can he possibly fix the misery he caused if he can't even realize that it's right in front of his face?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
You'll notice that Justin stopped saying that Canadians are doing better than ever. He always used to say that, and it's been about 5 months since he said that now. I think somebody gave him a heads up. Hey, that's probably a bad thing to say because people are suffering.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition may not think that Canada is the best country in the world, but we do. And the reality is we recognize Canadians are struggling right now. And that is why we continue to invest in supports for them, whether it's cutting childcare fees in half, whether it's investing in the kinds of jobs and careers we're going to need in the #1 battery supply chain country in the world, in drawing in significant investments right across the country, in moving forward into a brighter economic future, while we recognize that Canadians need support now. He offers fear and cuts while we offer support and a brighter future. That's what we're going to continue.
A brighter future, everyone. Just look around. This is the brighter future Justin Trudeau is bringing us. 30 homeless encampments in Halifax alone. It's just ridiculous. I'm trying to compile a different list of pictures of across Canada of all the different homeless encampments. It's getting pretty depressing doing that, if I'm completely honest. It's just sad, and it's cold outside, and places like Edmonton, they went through and burned an entire encampment. It's just disgraceful. After some more French back and forth, we're getting back into it here.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
is not worth the cost of food after 8 years of the NDP Liberal carbon tax. It's caused food prices to rise 20% in the last 2 years alone. So much for the affordable food they promised when they signed their coalition with the NDP leader. So much so that the Canada Food Bank is now forced to cut in half the number of potatoes that they're giving out. It's too expensive and there's too much demand. Instead of just telling those people who are eating half as much in Canada that things are great, why won't he follow our common sense plan to axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the member for Regina Louvain recognized yesterday, there is absolutely no data to support any link between our price on pollution and higher grocery prices. There simply is none. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we are a government anchored in evidence and data, and we will continue to be there to deliver things like a grocery rebate to Canadians, to put more money back in Canadians' pockets, even as we put a price on pollution with the carbon price rebate, and we will continue to defend Canadians' interests against the cuts proposed by that Conservative.
Well, you just heard it here from the bonehead, bumbling idiot Justin Trudeau that his carbon tax has no effect on food prices. Unbelievable that idiot just spewed that vitriol nonsense. Absolutely disgraceful. This man will go down as one of the biggest disgraces in Canadian history.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He wants to know the link between the carbon tax and the food price. Well, I'll help him out. So farmers use something called diesel. It goes in their tractors and combines and drying machines. It goes in their off-farm fuels that pay the carbon tax, on which he wants to quadruple the tax. Then the truckers who pick up the food, transport it to the grocery store, pay the carbon tax. Then the grocer pays the carbon tax to power the heat in that big Olympic stadium-size chamber we call a grocery store. If he doesn't get the link, how is he ever going to fix the problem?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The problem with the story that the Leader of the Opposition just told is there's absolutely no data to support it. He is all about political attacks. He is all about inventing reasons to not take action on the fight against climate change because his Conservative Party still doesn't understand that you cannot have a plan for Canadians' future or the future of the economy if you don't have a plan to fight climate change. Not only are we fighting climate change, Mr. Speaker, we're putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians and building the economy of the future.
I think Trudeau just stepped out here to really recognize his role in the WEF and their crooked agenda that they're casting across all Europe right now that all the farmers are revolting against. Here he is saying there's no link to that. There's just basic common sense. If you increase the costs of the people who are growing our food and the people who move it to the grocery store, obviously the price is going to go up. This man is just a corrupt piece of garbage. Sorry, I don't want to insult garbage, but what else do I compare it to? Horse dung? This man is worse than a steaming pile of horse dung.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of no evidence, we actually filed an order paper question asking for proof that his carbon tax is reducing emissions, and it came back that there was no evidence. For 8 years in government, after years of raising the tax, they have no proof that it reduces emissions at all. But we know it increases food prices, and this is why Canada's food professor said, I'm recommending a pause on the carbon tax for the entire food industry from farm gate to store and restaurants. If the Prime Minister doesn't have the common sense to axe the tax, will he listen to the food professor and cancel his plan to hike it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is actually reducing its emissions faster than our G7 partners, largely because we put a price on pollution. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition wants to make pollution free again. We do not think that is the right path for Canada. We know that investing in reduction of carbon emissions while putting more money back in Canadians' pockets, switching from home heating oil to heat pumps, moving forward in responsible ways as we're investing in supporting Canadians is the way to build a stronger future, but he proposes ideology, cuts, and fear tactics, Mr. Speaker.
Trudeau refuses to acknowledge the fact that Canada has 1.52% of a total effect of carbon on the planet. If we were all wheatgrass sipping, unicorn riding hippies, we would not even move the needle of this planet. Now, it's good to put in policies where you're, reusing plastic bags or whatever, not putting, certain things like straws or whatever that kill turtles, etc., into the environment. Obviously, we shouldn't be polluting and littering, but to make an entire nation suffer over some WEF Klaus Schwab nonsense is absolutely ridiculous. This is out of hand. Everything has gotten out of hand. Trudeau here is really starting to show his hand, but luckily people are starting to stand up all across the world. What we got here is another example. You're starting to see it more and more where liberals will stand up and ask questions to Trudeau. It's embarrassing.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, after months of debate in this House, albeit without the support of a single member of the Conservative Party, we voted to advance the new Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. President Zelensky and the thousands of Canadian Ukrainians I represent in my riding of Winnipeg South Centre expect our government to be there for them, and we have been every step of the way. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians why this deal is important for Ukraine and Canada, and will he reaffirm Canada's unwavering support for our ally as it fights to defend the interests of democracies around the world?
This guy, come on, what's wrong with this tampon sniffer? This guy he's just sucking up to JT. It's just deplorable, man, especially what he just said in the House of Commons. Give me a break.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the President of Ukraine asked us for a modernized Ukrainian free trade deal with Canada that would deal with investments, digital services, a range of
Digital services, did you just hear that? Has anyone forgotten about that? They're planning to put in that digital service tax. They're going to retroactively tax backwards to 2022. They're going to ask companies to pay taxes for 2022, 2023, 2024, whenever the tax goes in. This government is just horribly corrupt. Look at this snake.
Things that are necessary for Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery from the war. The Conservative leader yesterday again shamelessly strong-armed his MPs representing Ukrainian communities to betray them and play straight into Putin's hands. On this side, Mr. Speaker, the members for Winnipeg South Centre, Etobicoke Centre, Kingston the Islands, University Rosedale, Winnipeg South, Markham Thornhill, Scarborough Southwest, Anticartierville, and the entire Liberal caucus stood up.
He got cut off in his little temper tantrum thing. Look at this. Oh, God.
The Honourable Member from Courtney, Alberni.
I bet he totally orchestrated that. He's like, okay, I've got, okay, put the list there and get really crazy with it. God, Trudeau, man. Trudeau says the absolute biggest donkey dong. Quite the sizzler in the House of Commons today. They just go on a few other things. This is actually Gord Johns, my representative at NDP, an absolute fool. Yeah, Pierre Poilievre came completely loaded with all that Loblaws crap today. It was great to put him in his place. Trudeau's got numerous people lobbying for Loblaws. The corruption is unbelievable. Trudeau's got so many skeletons in his closet. He's starting to show his hand. It's so clear to see. He's so in bed, probably literally, with Klaus Schwab. Hopefully they got tampons on hand in the male bathrooms there in the WEF headquarters. Oh, what a joke these guys are. I put this off to you guys, though. What do you think is going to happen here? How long is this going to be playing out? Because right now, the protests are going wild. Belgium, all these places, everyone's standing up. So the dust has got to settle at some point. And when is that going to be? What is going to happen here? All these farmers pushing back on the WEF. The Conservatives are not taking it here in Canada. So at some point, this corrupt organization's got to go under, or do they go into hiding? It comes down to Klaus Schwab is an old codger. That guy's not going to be kicking around too much longer. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But if you guys are looking for something a little bit more chill, I got a silent hiking channel, link up here. If you want some more Trudeau madness, got that as well. Be sure to stay warm, stay fed. I'll see you guys on the next one.